Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Speak On It with your boy R.W. Coolings. 2021, baby. Episode 2. Got a lot to talk about today. Let's go ahead and get this thing going. Let's go. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Speak On the Show. I'm your boy, R.W. Coolings. First and foremost, giving honor to the God who allows me to come at you in this manner on a weekly basis. Good show for you this morning. Got a lot of information we need to pass on, but let's get these formalities out the way. Follow me, rwcoolings.com. That's the website. We're broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube this morning as usual, and also Spreaker.com, where you can get the audio for every show that I do. So to Speak On the Show is on audio. Also, you can find the audio on, watch this now, Apple, iTunes, on the podcast section. Search Speak On the Show. You can download the shows on iTunes on Apple for you folks that have Apple products. I'm an Android guy myself, but for y'all that have Apple products. Good morning, brother Weekfall. Good morning. Appreciate the support. Good morning, Gary Burns. Appreciate the support. And my brother, Brian Hoodie, appreciate the support. Appreciate the support. Ooh, I'm getting a little tongue-tied this morning. Y'all see I'm excited, man. We got some things to talk about. I was all over the board. I'm gonna get started before we even get into this. I'm all over the board with this today, but let me get this out the way. 844-904-2665, 844-904-2665. That's the call-in number. Call in, no matter what the situation is. Let your voice be heard. Say what you mean what you say. I don't even know where to start, y'all. I'm all over the place with what's going on with the events this week. I had to change my show up a little bit because of everything that went on. We got some things going on, y'all. Good morning, sis. Appreciate you. Let's go ahead and get into this. Politically speaking, let's start off with this. Politically speaking, Georgia, y'all showed up and y'all showed out. Georgia showed up and showed out. 4.4 million people voted in this runoff election. 3 million were early, so only 1.4 waited until the day of. 4.4 million people came out and voted. Now, the numbers were a little lower than the actual November election, but that's all right. And from this election, we got Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff. 33-year-old Jon Ossoff are going to be the new senators for Georgia. Let's give them a round of applause. I forgot my applause button, y'all, this morning, but that's all right. So we got the first black senator for Georgia in Raphael Warnock, and we also had the first Jewish senator for Georgia in Jon Ossoff. First, which means now former Senate Majority Leader, who is now the Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell. Maybe we can get some things through. Now, Senate Majority Leader is Chuck Schumer. Let's see how things change. Now you have the House, you have the Senate, and you had a presidency, and it's a 50-50 in the Senate. So Kamala Harris, Vice President, will be the tiebreaker in any instances that come to a tie in the Senate. Good morning, Lady Michelle. Good morning. Appreciate your support. So that's where we're at. So Warnock won by over 80,000, Ossoff by about 50,000. No ifs, no ands, no buts. They are in. That's where we're at. Hey, y'all showed out down there in Georgia. We've been talking about this since November, and we finally got it taken care of. We can start moving forward in that aspect as far as who's sitting where, when, and why. January 6th, Wednesday. We had the electoral vote count certification, and we're going to get into all the other things, but it started at 1 o'clock Eastern time. That's when they were just going to certify the votes that came in, the electoral college votes, identifying Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as the president and vice president of the United States. But some things went bad. Some things went a little awry. Things went awry at about 2 o'clock that afternoon, about an hour after they got into it. It was interrupted for 6 hours. A 6-hour interruption. They had to evacuate. They had to go to safe rooms. We had people storming the Capitol. Hold off on that for a minute. So Joe Biden was finally confirmed president-elect at 3:40 a.m. January 7th. There was a break. It took a total of 15 hours with that break in there for them to actually do something that was just a formality that became such a big issue in this election when they were talking about the voter fraud and different things like that. I just don't get it. Good morning, El Harwell. Appreciate your support. Happy New Year to you too. So I want you to remember these senators' names as time goes on. And it's something we need to pay attention to, not only right now, but as we go forward. Senator Ted Cruz and Paul Gosar, they were the ones who objected to Arizona's vote, congressional electoral votes. Josh Hawley objected for Pennsylvania, which strung it out a little longer. But we need to, and I'm going to say this now, because we'll forget in 2 years and then we'll forget in 4 years. We need to keep these senators and these congressmen's names, prevalent in our minds about what they did to hold up the will of the people when it came to the votes. They held up the will of the people just because it was a dog and pony show, and because this is what President Donald Trump wanted them to do, to try to steal the election when they were saying that the election was stolen from them. So all these things were going on, like I said, Tuesday we had the Georgia runoff, then Wednesday we had the electoral count to get to certify the votes from November 3rd. And then all hell broke loose during that time. And now I'm getting ready to get in. Straight talk, no chaser. Straight talk, no chaser. And let's talk about the ignorance, the ignorance. Let's just go with ignorance. Let's just start here. We had people at a rally for President Trump called Steal the Election or Steal the Vote or whatever they were doing out there, rallying about the way the vote went down, how they felt that the election was rigged and all this. But they were on the on the grounds of the mall, doing a protest, rally, whatever you want to call it, at the time on Wednesday, the same day they were doing the electoral count vote. And in his speech, President Trump, well, not just him, his son, Donald Trump Jr. and Rudy Giuliani, were already starting the flames to get some things started on that day. In his speech, President Trump, the last thing he told his people, those people that were out there, was that they were going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue and go to the Capitol, and they were going to impose their will. Now, I may be paraphrasing, but this is what I heard. But they want to go impose their will because they said they wouldn't change the Democrats' mind, but they're going to change the minds of the weak Republicans, because some were strong, but the weak Republicans, they were going to go down there and they're going to show their force and show them that they were going to make them change the vote to what they wanted, and that was President Trump to be the president. So the people walked down the street and they burst into, vandalized, did everything you can think of that they tried to put the Black Lives Matter movement and all these other people into doing at the Capitol, which is a federal building. But let me back up for a minute, because I think there's something that a lot of people didn't see at this rally before they got to that point. At this rally, there was a structure in the middle of the mall in the nation's capital, a stage built up probably about 10 feet high, with another structure about another 10 to 8 feet high, with a noose hanging from it, in the middle of the nation's capital on the mall during a rally for the president of the United States of America. Did y'all see that? Did anybody see this? A noose structure like they used to do back in the medieval days, where they had the thing out there where everybody in the certain, in the square where they would chop people's heads off and stuff. Did anyone else see this? Or was it just certain places showed it, certain places didn't? But you really have to understand why this doesn't sit well with me. As I mentioned, you're in the nation's capital. You're on the mall of the nation's capital. You're doing a rally. The president of the United States is speaking at this rally, and you have a structure with a noose hanging from it in the middle of the mall in the nation's capital where the president of the United States is speaking, and nobody has a problem with this? See, we concentrated on what they showed us as far as them storming the Capitol. You have to look at the subliminal messages that were going on during this demonstration, homegrown terrorists, whatever you want to call it, those people that were out there that day. There were subliminal messages all throughout there that we overlooked because we concentrated on what they wanted us to concentrate on, and that was the storming of the Capitol. A 20-foot, and I'm estimating, 20-foot wooden structure with a noose hanging from it on the nation's capital. I'm gonna keep saying in the nation's capital on the mall where the president of the United States is speaking, and nobody had a problem with this? Nobody. I haven't seen anybody on the news say anything about it, anybody talking about it, anybody in an uproar about it. Why? You know why? Because they're more concentrating on what they did at the Capitol rather than the symbolism of what that structure was all about. Now, people will say, well, they were protesting against the senators and the congressmen because of the election, so you can't equate that structure with the noose with racism. Wait, time out. Time out. You cannot tell me what I see and what I know. But this is in the nation's capital where the rally, where the president of the United States of America is speaking, and there's a structure this tall with a noose that big hanging there, and nobody has a problem with it. I just want y'all to let that marinate for a minute so you really understand the basis of what this was all about. This was about people who feel that the votes that were cast by people that look like me shouldn't have and never should have been counted in this election against who they felt should have won. And that structure was a reminder to all of you out there that look like me that you really don't matter. You take it how you want, but I'm telling you what I read into it. I'm telling you what I've seen. And now we're going to get into the fact of what all went on with this. That's number one. That's the one thing that stuck out with me. All that other stuff, minor to me in this aspect. Trump didn't cause this. Let's just be honest. President Donald Trump didn't cause this. President Donald Trump is just the one with the megaphone that is able to voice it and people rally around it. Everyone who was out there demonstrating, everyone who agreed with the things he said, everyone that has agreed with him for the last 4 years, and let's go back, everyone that has agreed with this president since he came down an escalator and announced his run for the presidency is guilty. If they've supported him, if they've backed him, they are all guilty. Because I don't care what you say, I don't care how you look at it. For you to have a president of the United States that sits there and only chooses to take care of or support those who support him is not what the office was established for. No how, no way. But all these enablers who have continued to support him when he talked about the handicapped man, or when he talked about my African American, or when he said, get those SOBs off the football field. All these things have led up to January 6th. But No one wanted to call him out on it because they said that's just him. He's not a politician. And they gave all these excuses and all these excuses and all these excuses. Even when he was being impeached, there was all these excuses. Well, he didn't understand what he was saying on the phone call. Yes, he did. And I'm going to get to that a little later on in this conversation because it was something I think that other people overlooked as well. I want you to think about Michigan. Remember during the election, run up to the election, well, when we were shutting things down, and there was an attempt in Michigan where you had these, they called a militia group that stormed the Capitol and had plans on kidnapping the governor of Michigan. They had zip ties, they had everything, they had weapons, and no one stopped them from going to that Capitol with their weapons, standing there, making a presence, having a presence. And then after the fact, they found out that they had plans on kidnapping her, killing her, taking her somewhere, interrogating her, all these different things. That, and this is me, what happened in Michigan was a test run for what happened on January 6th. Because if you watch the videos of those people storming that Capitol, you had people running around there in military gear, faces covered, zip ties, handfuls of zip ties to tie people up. Their plans were to take, and there was one plan, and I'll get into that a little later. There was plans to kidnap and do and impose their will on certain senators, congressmen that they didn't agree with or were against Donald Trump. And all this is going on in our nation's capital, being egged on by the president of the United States. But if you looked around on this day, when it was going on, and you seen, they showed the videos of the police officers at the Capitol. You had one brother I seen, he was running, he would stop, he was arguing with them, then he would run some more stairs and everything like that because they were pursuing him. You know, they were after him. And then when he finally got to a point where the white shirt officer supervisors came in, they didn't support him. They were talking to the protesters. They didn't support the police officer that was sworn to defend that Capitol. They didn't talk to him. They talked to the protesters. The disparities in how this was handled, the disparities in how Black Lives Matter movements, demonstrations have been handled were clear. There were no tanks in the streets. There were no armored personnel carriers. There was no full body armored police officers out there standing in front of the Capitol before they got there. There was none of this presence anywhere around the rally they had before they got to the Capitol. Why? Why is that? See, we can all sit back and come up with these quote unquote conspiracy theories about who, what, when, where, and why, but the visuals tell it all. You don't have to be a conspiracist to look and see what the differences are when there's a protest of Black Lives Matter compared to the protest and the rallies for President Trump. And the reason is because if you really think about it, when you talk about Black Lives Matter, they equate Black Lives Matter movement with the defunding of the police. So rather than go out there to make sure that they're protecting the people that are protesting, they're out there to impose their will on the protesters. In this rally, there was no one out there in large masses to control the protests, to monitor the protests, or to stop them from getting to the Capitol where they went. All these things are visual. Il Harwell, they walked the halls of the Capitol like they were on tour. Cops posing with them to take a selfie. I ain't got to say nothing else about that. We've all seen it. We all sat there and watched it live and in color on our TV. But let me tell you about my experience in Washington, D.C. I was there as a military member, and I was there as a civilian employee. I've done many many big events, inaugurations, Reagan's funeral, World War II memorial ceremony when they dedicated it, all the different things you can think of. While, I've been involved with a lot of those things. Not to brag, not to put it out, just I'm telling you what I know to be true. Pentagon, let's not leave that out. But there's certain things, there's certain access that has to be granted for you to even get to the point that these protesters got to. And me sitting there watching it, knowing the things that I had to do in order to get my people as well as me to be able to have access, not only with walking access, but for the vehicles to get that close to the Capitol. You can't tell me that someone didn't say, in the infamous words of the President of the United States, stand back and stand by. Was that when it was said a lead up to what happened on the 6th? Could be. But from my experience, you're not just going to walk up on the Capitol like that. And if in any time there's something going on in Washington, D.C., there are people put on what they call emergency overtime to make sure they have the support that they need. El Harway, had it been black and brown folks, there would have been a line of police outside the front door. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Judy Mills, definitely. That's all I'm saying. The disparities in what we've seen, the disparities in how we're treated, the disparities in how these rallies are handled tells us more visually than we need to even say verbally at this point. I'm not sure if y'all can tell, but at this point, there's certain things that we look at that when we see them and we talk about the differences and the racism that goes along with it and the way we're treated, the way they're treated and different things like that. And people say, oh, why do you always bring race into it? Race is a factor in anything that we do. It's just the fact when we voice it, people get upset. Judy Mills, so much intel, it would have been known. Exactly. And the thing is, when you tell a bunch of people to come to a location on a certain date because of a certain event happening, that you're going to be out there rallying to try to change the vote, you already knew that there was going to be infiltrators or whatever. But not when I say infiltrators, I'm not talking about Black Lives Matter movement infiltrators. I mean, there was some, let me say, African Americans sprinkled here and there, and I say sprinkled. I ain't talking about thrown in there. I'm talking about sprinkled. You seen one here, you seen one there, and all that. Okay. But when they start talking about, oh, the infiltrators, the people that rushed the Capitol were Black Lives Matter movement people and Antifa and all this, and order from him had to be put out. Thank you, Judy Mills. Somebody placed the order. Who put the order? You remember? A few good men. I want to know who put that order out there. You want the truth? You can't handle the truth. But this event, and I want to call these people that did this, and I wrote it down. Homegrown. Oh, wait, I just lost it. Anyway, homegrown domestic terrorists, HGDT. Not HGTV, HGDT, homegrown domestic terrorists. That's what they are. That's what they need to be identified in. Not protesters, not rally goers, not rioters, homegrown domestic terrorists. And then there was a law that the president had put in about anyone who did anything to a federal building or anything like that was supposed to serve 10 years automatically. I haven't heard anything about that since they started catching these people who took pictures and tracking them down. And I mean, these people were so comfortable. They were sitting in Nancy Pelosi's office with their feet up on the desk. He tore her sign down. This dude took mail from her desk and took a picture with it. Now I'm going to say this. And people might get a little upset when I say, but I'm just going to be real. I know my people because I'm one of my people. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, if we went in there and stole something, you ain't gonna see us out there posing in front of a camera showing everybody what we stole. We may tell somebody, but you're not gonna get us on camera. Not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. President also told them bring their guns and weapons. Gary Burns. And he didn't have to say it loud. They knew how to come. They knew to come prepared to do what they wanted to do. L. Harwell, White House down without the tanks. White House down. So let's talk about, and I'm transitioning here, but all this is under this same umbrella of Straight Talk No Chaser, because I'm just all over the place, but there's a lot of things that we need to touch on. Judy Mills, the problem is there are top dogs that support him within the different agencies that should have been aware to put preventative measures in place. And that's what you would normally think they would do. But they've been enabling this person for so long that they're so scared about their own political career that they're not going to go against him. And before we go any further, let me just say this. For all these people who were in the cabinet, who were that supported him or were in these positions that he appointed to them or whatever, that are jumping ship now, get back on the boat. Get them back on the boat. Do not forget their names, because you can't, for them to jump ship now with all the things he's done, and to get to this point now where he's got about 2 weeks after this has been certified, 2 weeks or so, and now everybody wants to jump ship. If you were that adamant about what he was doing, what he was saying, what his actions were, you would have never took the position, or you'd have left the position within 2 weeks after being there. Because I'm gonna tell you, everybody that gets a new position in anywhere is on probation, and it's up to you or the people that hired you to let you go at a time where you don't see it's a good fit. If they didn't see it was a good fit in the beginning, they sure don't see it not a good fit now. They agree with everything he was doing at the time. And now that, Malcolm X, everybody was quoting Malcolm X this week. The chickens have come home to roost. The chickens have come home to roost. Brian Hood, Sharon Carroll, morning, cuz. If this was truly about the vote, why was there a noose and a Confederate flag flying high? This was about the white people trying to stoke fear in the minorities and to say to the public, we are not going to relinquish white power. I seen something that said they tried to raise the Confederate flag at the Capitol. Now, I don't know if they got it to that point, but there was a point where they were trying to raise the Confederate flag on the Capitol and a Trump flag at the same time. Brian Hoodie, it's not until these groups are labeled terrorists, any actions will be done. Well, and that's what we hope. That's what we hope would happen. But will it really? Because we've seen this happen too many times where they don't want to put that label of terrorists on them because of how they look. Let me get into this here. Some people will agree with me on this, some people won't, but that's why this is called Speak On It, because I'm going to speak on it. Let's talk about Air Force veteran Ashley E. Babbitt. Air Force veteran Ashley E. Babbitt. And the reason I start off with Air Force veteran Ashley E. Babbitt is because the media has led off with her being an Air Force veteran before they identify her as someone who stormed the Capitol and was trespassing and doing something on the grounds that she shouldn't have been doing and was killed because of her actions. Now, don't get me wrong. I will never condone the killing or the death of anybody. But in this situation, when you decide to go and do something that you know is wrong, and you're a casualty of what happened, don't put all the accolades in front of the person's name to make them seem better than they actually were. On that day, on January 6th, she was a homegrown domestic terrorist going into the Capitol with no regard for anyone in the Capitol. What she did as a veteran, we give her props for, but don't lead with that. Lead with what she was doing and why her life was taken. Anytime we see the police take a life of a George Floyd or Tamir Rice, or any of the other ones, Sandra Bland, all the names we can think of, they lead off with their past history and their records and all this But with this one, they want to start off that she was an Air Force veteran, 11-year Air Force veteran, and that she, she served her country. She loved her country. She was a patriot. Watch that word. She was a patriot. She was such a patriot and such an Air Force veteran that she forgot what her oath was that she took to defend and uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, which she, at that time, at that day, when she was killed, was a domestic terrorist. No other way to put it. No other way to put it. And then for people to come out now and try to talk about how she was this and she was that, look at the videos they posted. See, they try to cover that up. The video she posted, she was down for whatever movement they were willing to do. And she lost her life because of it. Not because they picked her out, but because she chose to be somewhere doing something she shouldn't have been doing. Judy Mills, they were walking around with mannequins. They had nooses. There it is. L. Harwell, they waved enough of them on camera on the Capitol floor. Speak it. I'm trying to let it go. Trying to leave it out there. Let the truth be told. Judy Mills, yep. Leslie Ann Bush, yes. See, this is where, and we're all in agreement. But when we look at the big picture, and I don't like to get into that comparison that if these were black folks storming the Capitol or if this, that, you don't have to even put that comparison there. We already know. We don't need to harp on it. We see it in the streets with the police officers. So if we see it in the streets on the everyday police officer, why do you think it was going to be any different at the Capitol? But the way they tried to portray her, because she lost her life. Now, here's my question. Would they have identified her as an 11-year Air Force, or how many years Air Force veteran, if she would have just been arrested for being on the grounds and trespassing? Or would they have just identified her as a rioter or rally goer or whatever? How would she have been identified if she wouldn't have lost her life? That's another one. Let that marinate for a minute. Let that marinate. Judy Mills, Trump party watching the attack like it was a joy celebration. I'm going to get into that. I'm going to get into that. L. Harwell, yes, we know. She was trespassing on federal property, y'all. Trespassing on federal property. And then second, she didn't heed the commands that were get down, get back, get out of the way. She continued to press forward. And a Capitol policeman shot her. I ain't done yet. I'm not done. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick lost his life. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick lost his life. How did he lose his life? He was beaten to death by these Trump supporters with a fire extinguisher. He was beaten to death by Trump supporters with a fire extinguisher for probably trying to do his job and keep them out of the Capitol. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. Now, I want anyone out there who always talks about Blue Lives Matter to tell me at this time, does Brian Sicknick's blue life matter? Did it matter that day? They killed a police officer with a fire extinguisher for doing his job. And you always, whenever someone says Blue Lives Matter, you come with this counter of whenever somebody says Black Lives Matter, excuse me, they come out with the Blue Lives Matter. But in this case, nobody has said that. Nobody has said that the Blue Lives Matter because of who killed him. They killed him because he was doing his job. Murder. With a fire extinguisher. They beat him with a fire extinguisher. But they were peaceful protesters. Now, there was a Metro DC police officer that came out, and he's off duty. And he said, this is what he said. he didn't reveal his name in this. He said off-duty police officers and members of the military who were among the rioters flashed their badges and ID cards as they attempted to overrun the building. And then he said, if they can storm the Capitol with no regard to punishment, what abuses of power do they do when they're in their uniform? If they can bum rush, let's just call it bum rush the Capitol with no regard because they're flashing their ID card when they're off duty, what are they doing on a regular basis when they're in uniform? This came from a Metro DC police officer who said he's seen them flashing their badges of military members and police officers to the police officers that were trying to protect the building in order to get access. And whoever the officers were to let them in, they should be held accountable too. Because just because they had a badge or an ID card, they were there to do ill will. But you still let them in. You still let them in. Why? Oh, I got more. As I said before, they said it was Antifa, BLM, they infiltrated and all this kind of stuff. You know, it's always somebody else's fault. Nobody wants to take accountability for the things that they've done, the things that went on. Nobody wants to take accountability. However, if they would have been able to overturn the election with their actions, they would have been plastered all over the news celebrating the fact that the Trump supporters were the ones who changed the election. But because it didn't go in the direction that they wanted it to go, nobody wants to take accountability for what they did. Why? Sharon Carroll. These same peaceful protesters defecated in one of the congressman's office and smeared it all over the walls. What does that have to do with peaceful protests? But they call us animals. They weren't there to protest. They weren't there to protest. They weren't there to change the will of the people. They were there to simply let you know where you stand in this United States of America. Because if that was not their main purpose, then that structure with that noose wouldn't have been hanging in the middle of the mall in the nation's capital, as I keep repeating. Notables, 13 people facing federal charges stemming from the riot up to this point. I seen this last night. 13 people so far. And we've seen the pictures, you know, they caught these people, they tracking them down through Facebook with their facial recognition and all that. But I got three things that happened. Christopher Alberts from Maryland. He was arrested for wearing a bulletproof vest and carrying a handgun and 25 rounds of ammo on Capitol grounds. If he was there to protest, what's he got a weapon for? Was he got 25, 25 rounds of ammo? And he got on the bulletproof vest? He knew what he came to do. He didn't come to dance. Not with that. Another one. I don't know if everybody heard about this one. And it goes back to what I said last week. They got the whole name for these guys. Lonnie Leroy Kaufman. Lonnie Leroy Kaufman, 70 years old, out of Falkville, Alabama. At 9:15 on January 6th, he parked a pickup truck a block away from the Library of Congress, which is not that far from the Capitol. You can't make this up. Inside the truck was 11 homemade bombs, an assault rifle, and a handgun, as well as loaded magazines. The explosive bombs that he made were mason jars filled with melted styrofoam and gasoline. They said that these bombs that he made have the same effect as napalm. And what he told them was, when he was making them with the melted styrofoam and the gasoline, was so that it would stick to whatever it caught on to. So if you were out there and he blew one of these things up and it exploded, the styrofoam, while it's on fire, would stick to your body and cause burns on your body. He had 11 of these. When Kaufman was searched, he had a 9mm handgun and two 22 caliber guns, one in each one of his front pockets. None of the weapons, watch this now, for all you gun rights activists, none of the weapons were registered to him. None of the weapons were registered to him, but he had them. Here's another one. Cleveland Grover Meredith Jr. Cleveland Grover Meredith Jr. I told you they get them whole names in there when they doing something dirty, don't they? This dude arrived in D.C. a day before the rally. He was there a day before. He was anxious. He was ready to go. He was ready to go. He was writing threats about wanting to shoot Nancy Pelosi or run her over. He was going to shoot her or run her over. Now, he's posting this stuff through text messages and Facebook. The guns they found on him was a Glock 19, a 9mm, and an assault rifle, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. His text message that he sent, one of the last ones, was he was thinking about putting a bullet in Nancy Pelosi's noggin on live TV. He was thinking about putting a bullet in Nancy Pelosi's noggin on live TV. But it was a still the election rally. It was a rally for them to come out and just speak about their misunderstanding of why the election did not go to Donald Trump. That's what this was all about. That's what it was all about. So they say. That's what it was all about. But they got weapons. They got bombs that do the same thing as napalm. All these things were going on in our nation's capital at a rally that the president of the United States was speaking at, with a structure 20 feet high with a noose hanging from it on the mall in the nation's capital. I'm going to keep repeating that because I think people need to get the gist of what's going down. This is not something that just happened yesterday. This is not, it wasn't just planned the day before this. This was planned. He kept telling his people, his supporters, January 6th, we're going to have a rally. We're going to have a rally in D.C. because we want to overturn this election. This has been going on and on and on. And if you go back, he also planted the seeds. If he lost the election, it was rigged. And these people just rode that. And he rode it. And they wrote it, and he kept saying it, and they kept jumping on the bandwagon. So all these things that happened on January 6th did not just happen and start planning on January 5th. It's a process. It's a process. Now, this right here, I'm about to talk about. Someone brought it up earlier about how the president's people were sitting back just watching it, and they showed pictures of where they were in the tent behind where he did his speech, where they were watching on the video feed of the people that were marching towards the Capitol and everything like that. But there's something that I'm not sure if y'all know, and this ain't breaking news, so I'm not the breaker of this news, but I found this news very interesting last night. President Trump and Rudy Giuliani both mistakenly called Senator Mike Lee, who is a Republican, as the riots were happening on Wednesday. So while the riots were going on, President Trump and Rudy Giuliani found time to call Senator Mike Lee, but they called the wrong senator. They thought they were calling Senator Tommy Tuberville from Alabama. Tommy Tuberville was football coach in Alabama. Now he's senator, newly elected senator, just was put in office, when they put these people in the other day. Hold on 1 minute. They supposedly got intel on these folks, but nothing on the noose erected and plans to secure the Capitol. Yeah, right. Exactly. So President Trump, Rudy Giuliani called Senator Mike Lee. They're looking for Tommy Tuberville. And what they wanted to do was to convince him to delay the counting of the Electoral College votes. That's why they called him, and they called him at 2:00. The first call they made to Senator Mike Lee looking for Tommy Tuberville, mind you, was at 2:00. They started the things with the Electoral College vote to certify it at 1:00. The protest started between 1:00 And at 2 o'clock, by 2 o'clock, these senators, congressmen had already been evacuated. It says the first call was at 2 o'clock, right after the senators were evacuated. Senator Mike Lee answered the phone, and it was clear they were looking for Tuberville, and they gave President Trump the wrong number to Tuberville, so they got Mike Lee. Lee found Tuberville. Senator Lee searched for Tuberville and found him and gave him the phone. Tuberville talked to the president for about 10 minutes. And the only reason the call was cut short was they were moving them from one location to a more secure location, so he wouldn't have reception where they were going. The president during this time was trying to convince Tommy Tuberville, Senator Tommy Tuberville, to make additional objections to the Electoral College vote. He, during this riot, during this homegrown domestic terrorists breaking into the Capitol and all this, the president of the United States calls a senator, a newly seated senator, to tell him to delay as much as possible the votes for the Electoral College, keep pushing it off as much as he can in the middle of this riot going on in the Capitol. No regard for any of the senators, and I'm going to get to that. The second call was at 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. from Rudy Giuliani. Senator Lee didn't pick up the phone this time. He let it go to voicemail. This is what the voicemail said. This is what Rudy Giuliani said on the voicemail. I'm calling you because I want to discuss with you how they're trying to rush this hearing and how we need you, our Republican friends, to try to just slow it down so we can get these legislators to get more info to you. I know they're reconvening at 8 o'clock, but the only strategy we can follow is to object to the numerous states and raise issues so we get ourselves into tomorrow, ideally until the end of tomorrow. This is your president of the United States. Yes, Harwell. L. Harwell. Listen to the tape. Yep. I'm just reading. I'm reading word for word from what I read, what I wrote down from the article. This is the president of the United States and his lawyer talking to a senator to tell them to slow down the process. In the meantime, senators and congressmen lives are in danger by these protesters, homegrown domestic terrorists that broke into the Capitol with no regard for human life. They're in there, and this president and his lawyer are calling one senator to tell him to slow down the process when they reconvene at 8 o'clock. Now, mind you, and this was what jumped out at me. The president and his officials did very little to check on Vice President Mike Pence, who was in the Capitol that day with his family that day. They never called to check on him, check on his well-being or anything, but they found time to call a senator to tell him to keep delaying the process until tomorrow. And they kept saying until tomorrow. Why until tomorrow? What was the plan for tomorrow? This did not just happen on January 6th. This was a plan. No matter how you look at it, no matter how you dice it up, no matter what you think, this was a plan. But hold off until tomorrow. Why? What was going to be different tomorrow that wasn't going on that day? What were they going to do differently from one day to the next? Rejected at least 10 is what he said. They did nothing. Anybody find time? Go out there. Look it up. Find the tape. Listen to it. Let it marinate. And for all those people out there, and I'm not trying to call nobody out, but if you are a staunch Trump supporter and you still support him and you choose to overlook this message and this story and all the things that have gone on over this time, then I think you need to do some soul searching. You need to really figure out what's going on with you when you don't see a problem with this. I'm and now now they want to heal the country. Now everybody's coming out, the senators, the congressmen, all these people, and even the protesters who were there want to heal the country. They want everyone to go and try to come together, a kumbaya moment to say, yeah, but can we all just get along? Can we all get back to being United States citizens? Can we all come together and make this world a better place, starting here, starting today? After everything that has gone on over these last 4 years. And now you want to sing Kumbaya. Now that this has gotten to this escalation point, you want to hold hands and sit down and break bread and sit down and talk about the issues between us so we can try to come to a happy medium so we can all live here and prosper and do our thing. But until this happened, you didn't care. You didn't care. But today, everyone wants to heal, and I get that. But where was this same energy when you knew the country was torn apart? Where was this same energy when you thought that your president was going to be reelected? Where was this same energy that when the Black Lives Matter movements was out here protesting these killings by police officers at the hand of police officers, that you wanted to heal the country? Rather than heal the country, you kept talking about how the person who the police killed should have just followed orders. But now that the rabbits got the gun, let's come together. Let's heal. Let's heal. Just remember, you and this president and his followers pulled the scab off this wound. You pulled the scab off this wound that needed stitches in order to heal correctly. At this point, the only hope we have of healing this country is the fact that we have a Democratic president, a Democratic-run Senate, and a Democratic-run House. That's the only hope we have of getting back to some sense of normalcy. And you can say what you want about Joe Biden, of how many years he's been a politician and what he's done, but at the end of the day, I will take a Joe Biden who's had 30 to 40 years of political experience at this time right now to do the right thing by everybody. You take it how you want, but at this point, and in the 54 years I've been walking the face of this earth, this is the man we need there right now. Right now. Because coming out of what we've been through, we need stability. And the only way you get stability is to have someone there who's seen things that have gone on, who has some clue on how things should be handled, and is going to do it for the masses rather than the many few. Sharon Carroll. Hell no, this is about power, period, white power. That's why all these people were on the Trump train. They see the writing on the wall. This is like Custer's last stand. All they had to do was be fair, but no, they don't want to share power. They scared, and so is their president. Because I can't even say nothing about that. I mean, it's just plain. It's just cut dry. El Harwood, amen. Let's give him a chance and support him. That's all. And the thing is, this is where I think the misperception comes in. There's always this undertone that none of the people who voted for Donald Trump never would have supported him in any way. It's not a true statement. Nobody can say that they have ever supported, that a president has been supported 100% by everybody in the United States of America. Nobody. Not even President Obama, that most people love, unconditionally. But there's nobody who has been supported 100% of the time in any decision they make. They make certain decisions that are good for you. They make certain decisions bad for you. That's the way it goes. But for people to jump on this bandwagon that we didn't want Trump from the beginning, and we've been against him in all these investigations, you have to look at the big picture. It's not the fact that we didn't want him, but the writing was on the wall from the time he came down the escalator on what we were in store for. And the reason I say that is because everyone that was up on the debate stage with him through the process of him getting the nomination to be the Republican nominee, he talked about each and every one of them and put down everything they've ever done in their life, let alone their career and their family. So you can't just put it on the people who don't support Trump now, because half y'all didn't support him at the time he was running. What changed? Oh, as I mentioned last week, your 401k, your TSP, all those things changed. So now you're on the bandwagon. All money ain't good money. Let me say that one more time. All money ain't good money. Medication inside of Kool-Aid. Jim Jones aspect. Speak it. Let's go to mind, body, and soul segment. Mind, body, and soul. This one right here correlates to what I've been speaking about, but it also correlates on what we need to deal with and what we need to do and how we need to handle 2021. And here we go. This is from Maya Angelou. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. People know themselves much better than you do. That's why it's important to stop expecting them to be something other than who they are. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I say that in this segment today because not only do we need to understand this that I just read in the aspect of the people we elect, but we also need to chart it over into our everyday lives. A lot of times we give people the benefit of the doubt too many times. We look at them and we say, they didn't mean what they said. They aren't who they appear to be. All the excuses that you've made, all the excuses that you've ever given someone or you've made for yourself. You are who you are. They are who they are. Stop making excuses for them. Stop giving them the benefit of the doubt. When they show you who they are, accept them for who they are and deal with them on that level. We get so caught up in having an open heart, and trying to make everybody happy and please everybody. But when do you start pleasing yourself and accepting people for how they treat you rather than how you think they ought to treat you? If someone spits in your face, I guarantee you're not going to be around those people often. And if you are around them, you're going to do everything in your power to be aware and be cognizant that this person spit on me before. They probably going to spit on me again. Why? Because I gave them the opportunity to spit on me the first time. When we talk about this election back 4 years ago and this election now, it breaks it down clearly. Accept them for who they are, not who you think they're going to be or who they should be. When Donald Trump, and I keep saying it, came down that escalator, y'all knew who he was. Y'all knew who he was. When Joe Biden ran for president and when he sat as the vice president for Barack Obama and sat in the Senate, y'all knew who he was. But you tend to forget because people ingrain in your mind this little problem. If we all were judged on the mistakes we made in our life, no one would come around you. However, when people show you who they truly are, accept it, receive it, and move on. Stop holding on to the fact that you think you can change somebody. Stop holding on to the fact that you think someone's going to change because they sit in a different chair than they did yesterday. Stop. In 2021, you need to accept it for what it is. Face value. Take more account into yourself rather than looking at people and what they're going to do for you, how they're going to treat you, because it's you. Only you can control you. People accept you for who you are. You need to do the same thing for them. We got to get out of this mindset that people will change. People change because they choose to, not because you ask them to. When people show you who they are, you better hold on to that. If they change in life, then you accept the change they make in life. But the day they show you who they are, you better accept it, because if you don't, it's going to come back to haunt you. And that's where we're at. The Capitol, those homegrown domestic terrorists, it wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. It wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. Brian Hoodie, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, like Luke 6:45. Amen. This is where we need to be in 2021. We need to go into 2021 with our eyes wide open. When people show you who they are, trust me, that's who they are. They're not just going to change for you. If they're not changing for themselves, then there's never truly a change. We're going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. I appreciate everybody tuning in this morning. I appreciate y'all support for coming in. You know, it was a rough week for us. And let's just be honest. Even though we may have been sitting in the comfort of our own homes and watching these things happen and seeing the disparities and how they treat the Black Lives Matter movement compared to what was happening with these homegrown domestic terrorists at the Capitol, one thing we know for sure, and I say it all the time and I stand on it firmly, God is in control. God is in control. While you were safe at home, watching on the news, listening, seeing this play out in real life, on your 65-inch TV and all that kind of stuff, you know in your heart God's in control. He hadn't failed you yet, and he's going to continue to take care of you. We have to make better decisions in what we do, and starting now, not right before the next elections come up in 2 years, but starting right now, we need to do our due diligence and start reading up and doing our research on these people who are going to be running. When you hear those names come up, you better take heed and you better pay attention. Because, and I'm going to say this, and some people will agree, some won't, Donald Trump ain't the first, and he won't be the last. He's not the first, and he won't be the last. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Make sure you go to iTunes. If you got iTunes, download the audio. If you want to hear it, or Spreaker.com, go to the website, rwcoolins.com. Go there. Merchandise is still out there. Got some long sleeve shirts up there. So I appreciate y'all support. And look, reach out to somebody. Let them know what we're doing over here to Speak on the Show. Tell them tune in every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific, and all y'all in between. I don't know how them numbers work, but 2 hours, 1 hour, however it works. Get them on here. Let's get in here. Let's continue to have these conversations, and let's make our movement the movement that's going to make change. Because as change is made and the mindsets change, we become better at who we are, and we make those around us even better. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. As I always say before I sign off, love yourself, love one another, keep your head up, and most definitely keep your faith in God. And the last thing I'm going to say is, while y'all out there in your everyday movements, be safe. Be safe, because you don't know, you truly don't know what somebody else's intentions are against you because of who you are and how you look. Love y'all, and I'm out. Peace.